Hello, we are here with Kenneth Nash.
You missed the J.
I did miss the J, didn't I? Kenneth J Nash. Okay, awesome. That's really important, actually. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
yeah.
When people want to search you.
Well, because there is a Kenneth Nash who's a jazz musician.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he plays for Herbie Hancock.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea about that, actually.
Yeah.
Did people advise you to put a J in?
I just did it because, like, there's already a Ken Nash who's a friend of mine on Facebook, who's an American who lives in Czechoslovakia, and he's a Czech Republic, sorry. Yeah. He's a musician. There's a Kenny Nash who's a country and western singer.
Yeah.
And then there was a Kenneth Nash, and it's like, what do you do?
That's quite interesting, actually. Did you sort of?
I Googled
this is going to be. You Googled it. You looked it up. You're like, right, who's got the same name as me? Yeah. That's quite interesting, actually.
I've done that. Change it.
Yeah, I've done that with birthdays, but never names.
Oh,
yeah. But yeah, so you've done you've done a performance with us on AudioStage. Obviously, you wanted to talk about how that went. How do you think that went?
Well, I haven't seen it, but hopefully it went okay. Yeah, it's a nice room to play, and you guys set up the atmosphere. It was nice, isn't it? Chilled,
brilliant. Cool. Yeah. I know. Obviously, I've seen you play before, and you're doing lots of things musically, especially for the local scene. I've seen that you're doing things like festivals. You've got your own studio and things like that.
It all develops really from when I started as a singer-songwriter and in bands. I kind of had some bad experience in studios.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I think I could learn how to do this.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I learned how to do it, and then I started recording my own stuff. But then I found that, like, I'd got a band of people who were all really talented singer-songwriters, and there's not a lot of money in music when you're starting out. So I said to them, well, look, I'll record you as payment, if you like, for being in the band. So I recorded and produced and promoted them, and it was all part of it. And then it kind of grew into a record label, which everybody has a part in. And then, it's grown from there, really. Yeah,
fantastic. I was going to say, it's quite interesting, because the sort of thing, obviously, as you're describing it, is quite similar to sort of what we're doing from a marketing media sort of point of view. I mean, yours is, it seems quite a bit more involved in the sense of you're doing lots and lots of work with particular artists, and but it's interesting that you sort of like encompass that. Yeah,
definitely.
It feels like you encompass that sort of ethos that we've tried to work to, and trying to help musicians, because it's a tough world.
It's very tough. It's very tough. I know you've got a background as a professional musician, and it's hard to break into. Even I've worked with a lot of professional musicians who are household names who have jobs.
Yeah,
so it's and that kind of proves the point, really. It is tough to break into. And also, if you're an original artist, the money isn't necessarily there available for you in the local scene.
No,
if you want to do covers, then you can get gigs, you can get paid to entertain people. But that's not really an area that I was interested in when I started out. I was only really like, well, I'm only in this really to do my own stuff. So that's what I'll do, and maybe I'll find an audience. And it's kind of those first sort of steps where you find people who are really, really creative and really have got a lot of merit, artistic merit to them, but they don't necessarily have the ability to promote themselves. They don't necessarily understand the industry, or have a business acumen about them. Which it is a business at the end of the day. So,
absolutely,
I kind of try to help people on that sort of level. I can only take people to a certain stage. But I can then introduce them to other people that can take them further.
Well, that's something I find really interesting, because it's as a musician, I mean, people obviously see your set, and a fantastic set. Really enjoyed it, and it's been quite interesting, because I have to sit and do all the audio editing and stuff like that. But the great thing about it is that I get to almost relive the experience, in a sense, and actually get to listen to your songs in a more sort of much closer, paying lots more attention to the things you're doing, and obviously really love what you do and love your music. So talking about a bit more about your I suppose what made you start doing music. Because that's really it's an interesting thing to get
I think
to.
I've always been into music in one way or another. I was in first time I learned to play guitar, I was probably 10 or 11, I think.
Yeah.
9, 10, 11, something like that. And I learned to play an acoustic guitar, and the guy who was teaching me taught me Help Me Make It Through the Night by Chris Christopherson, which is interesting because that's a song which I love to this day.
Yeah.
And incidentally, he's playing Black Deer Festival this year, and I'm trying to get on this. I'm trying to get on the bill for that.
Yeah. Well, you should. You should be on the bill for that.
Well, anyway, but so it's always been there. So I started out, and then I was in bands from sort of 12, 13 onwards.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was learning to DJ as well, and I started out, as a mobile DJ, and then went into clubs and pubs, and was playing sort of hip hop stuff actually.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And it kind of then eventually went back into music again in different bands again, and then it kind of dawned on me at some point that I was doing a lot of the arranging for stuff, and bands being as they are, can be flaky at times, not singling out any of former band members here, but it's just the nature of things. Things come and go, and things have their moment, and then they don't have their moment.
Absolutely.
And some people feel it in the band, and some people don't, and you get rifts happen, and it just seemed to me that I was organising all these really great gigs, and we couldn't do them because somebody had fallen out with somebody, or someone left the band, and we couldn't find a replacement quick enough. And I just thought, this is crazy. I've written all these songs. I've got a band I'm playing them with. Well, why don't I put myself forward? Is it being just me?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I got Google out and had a look at the names. You see,
that's exactly At
that point,
if I could be just Kenneth Nash, I know. Someone's already got it.
You've got it. And I'm not going to take it off Herbie Hancock's percussionist.
Well, it's quite a big shoes to fill. Yeah,
certainly
absolutely.
Is.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think you where you've come from. I mean, as you say, you've been doing music basically all of your life.
Pretty much, really. One way or another. Yeah.
Did you find that you were sort of influenced to do music, especially in your childhood, by your parents, or was that something?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's interesting because when I was in my early teen years and I was into anything Def Jam put out, so quite some hardcore hip hop for the time.
Yeah.
Mixing it up with hard rock as well, with Rick Rubin doing all the production on it. So that was the kind of stuff I was into, but that wasn't anything like my parents were into. They'd introduced me to Bob Dylan, John Denver, and Tim Hardin, Johnny Cash, and sort of more sort of middle of the road kind of country, folk music. And it's funny how, because obviously those influences stick with you, eventually it comes full circle and it comes out in your own writing. When you write a song, I don't necessarily think, oh, I'm going to write a country song. It's just I'll write a song and it comes out. It's like, oh, it's a country song.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
That's kind of how it works. It's not necessarily, and I never strove to write a song in a certain style. I always thought I'm just going to write the song to suit what it is I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of approaching songwriting, because I've spoken to people before and they've said that they would put themselves within a certain box and a certain genre, whereas I think that a lot of the time when you're really just focusing on your songwriting and focusing on your individual music, it's sort of, I imagine you get tired with the singer-songwriter thing a hell of a lot.
I do. I always found I was getting put into a folk box by non-folkies. Yeah. The folkies didn't want me in the folk box because I wasn't, singing in a traditional voice or accent, about a mining disaster or something. Yeah. That wasn't what I was writing about. So and I didn't do any traditional numbers, very few. So I didn't kind of fit the folky box. Singer-songwriter, I guess, is where I am and it's what I do. But I kind of, everything I seem to put out seems to be somewhere between folk, country, blues, rock, and some soul. So it's kind of like somewhere in that area. Yeah. So I try not to put myself in any boxes, but it's inevitable it happens.
I think sometimes it is unfortunately inevitable. I think that the that unfortunately it seems to be the way the music industry wants to put people.
I can understand why it works that way. Yeah. You're trying to sum up a band.
Yeah.
And you've got to do it in like 3 sentences.
Yeah.
You've got to get across what boxes they tick.
Yeah.
So you've got to at some point you've got to mention either they're referencing certain artists from a genre, or they're bringing something new to a genre.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Which I think that comes sort of that, as you say, it just comes naturally when people were booking you for festivals. You might apply for certain festivals because you go, well, I know that these people will see me and identify me as this in a sense.
Yeah.
So I imagine that also does factor into sometimes your decision making as well.
A lot. I tend to play. I do do play big festivals, but I like the intimate, like spiritual type festivals.
Yeah.
Where you're playing and it's a pin drop audience,
Yeah.
even though it's a festival, it's still a pin drop audience, and I love that. And I think because of what I do can be delicate, I think it kind of has to have that listening audience. If it doesn't have the listening audience, it kind of gets lost in it. And also I need that listening audience in order to focus on what I'm doing.
Definitely.
And to get the to connect myself best as I can with the song. I need to have that kind of vibe going on. And I've learned that, it's the hard way really, that you apply for a lot of festivals and you turn up to play some of them and you think, this wasn't a good decision. This wasn't a good idea. But you still, obviously you do it because you're there. But, so I have become a lot more selective these days about which ones I apply for. As you know, you apply for lots and get few.
That's it. You might apply for 100 festivals and get 2. It just seems to be the nature of it, doesn't it?
It is, yeah.
But it's quite interesting. You obviously touched on your on influences and things like that. But with regards to, obviously, I mean, we had a brief chat earlier about the things that you write songs about. When we talk about those sorts of things, what would you say? Because I think you connect very deeply emotionally to the sort of music that you're putting out. And it's all very relevant. What sort of things? I mean, obviously you must draw on certain experiences and things.
Well, I'm not a young man, and I've lived a life that's rich and full. To quote Frank Sinatra, I think.
It might be.
But I found originally what I was doing years ago was I was writing poems. If I had any angst about a situation or something was upsetting me, I would write a poem about it, and I've always done that. And I found it was always a method by which I could kind of deal with the issue. And the songwriting kind of grew out of that. I suddenly sat down one day with a guitar and had a poem that I'd written in front of me and realised that I'd written it in verses. In like 4 lines of verse. So I'm thinking, that kind of looks a bit like a song. So then I just invented a chord structure to go along with, and that's how it then became songwriting rather than poetry. But I still write many more poems than I ever songs I write, because I find poetry so much easier to write. It just flows. But I don't share my poetry, weirdly enough.
That is interesting, actually. I
just share my songs, but not my poetry. It's kind of I don't know. I think it speaks too much about me.
Okay, a little bit too much of an expose.
You do that thing when you upload something to Facebook and you look at it for 10 minutes. You think, no, delete.
No, got to get rid of that.
I don't want people to know that. No, it's too much. It's too much.
I find that quite interesting, actually, because I mean, you sort of you're bearing all in the poetry then.
Well, I guess it's a bit more political. The poetry is political, whereas the songwriting is purely about emotions and about real life things that have happened to me. I used to change it so that it was he said or she said, but now it's I said. So and I found when I made that step that I was able to really connect with the songs and really it improved my vocal performance, weirdly enough. That's interesting, because I mean, obviously you're creating this personal experience, whereas I mean, it sounds like, if you were saying he said, she said, was almost like saying, well, it didn't happen to me, kind of. But I imagine that most of these things did, in a sense. Well, they all did, But then you're in danger of them being a preaching. And that's something that I heard in some of the songs that I was writing, was this kind of preaching element. I didn't like it, because it's not like, I'm not trying to tell people how to live their lives.
No.
I'm just trying to say this is how mine's gone.
Yeah. These are my personal experiences.
But it's not all negative. There has been a lot of the stuff I've been writing recently has been a lot more positive. It's all about love that I'm writing about, and about relationships that have gone well.
Okay.
So,
brilliant.
Yeah. So there is a turn.
That's always good news.
But obviously, there's still one of the tracks that I've written recently is about the plight of being homeless, because I was homeless for a little while.
Right.
And it's about the plight of being homeless and the mental issues that surrounded me becoming homeless, but also surrounds a lot of people becoming homeless.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to draw a positive from that experience.
Yeah.
But also trying to connect with people so they kind of get an inside view of how it can happen and how easily it can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
And now, of course, it's very relevant.
Absolutely, yeah. I was going to say it is something that's very relevant, and I think that your personal experience. I mean, you've probably gone through. I'm not saying that everyone's gone through exactly the same thing, but a lot of people can relate to the things that you've gone through.
Yeah, I don't think I've had a unique experience necessarily. I think, we all go through the same stuff. Relationships work and then they break, and it's when they break, it's can lead you down paths that you wouldn't necessarily have thought you would go down. So
definitely. Yeah, I think some of the and especially when you talk about that and talk about relationships, you talk about being homeless and all the. I imagine there's a wide array of topics that you do cover. Because those are all very personal experiences and things that you're having, that when you don't have to share them, but you're by choice sharing these things. It's almost. Do you feel like that's almost a type of a coping mechanism or a therapy, in a sense, that you're able to get these things out?
I think so. I think it started out as a cathartic exercise, but now I think I try to create art out of emotion.
Yeah,
I suppose is the easiest way of putting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I try to turn, as I say, these days there's a lot of good stuff in there, and it's trying to turn that sense of feeling that you have when you write that song.
Yeah.
The music, I try and make the music kind of match in with that to portray it as best I can.
Yeah.
It's
quite interesting because we had John and the Uke Dealers on previously.
Oh, yeah, great.
And it's quite funny. I was sort of sitting down and listening to their music, and they've got all these really upbeat, like jangly songs, and then but the music's really political and really dark and all these sorts of things. You go, these two things don't go together, but like in almost an ironic sense, it's really like upbeat, little guitars and ukuleles. But it's really interesting to sort of see how they're sort of they're not necessarily, I think, being deliberately ironic, but it can come across that way in a sense.
I think so. I think however you feel you can get the message out. Whatever your abilities are and whatever your influences are will drive how you get that message out, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I suppose in that sense we are all unique as artists because we all just do it our own way, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think so I was sort of talking about your influences and things like that, talking about the future, which is something that I sort of want to get onto. Is like, I know that we briefly discussed that you're recording an album.
I am
at the moment.
Yes.
Yes. I'd love to know more about it.
Well, it's hit a bit of a brick wall over the last 5 weeks because of the cold that I've had. But when I started in November, I'm working on a song at a time. These are all songs that I've written fairly recently, and I've been playing some of them for 18 months or so live. But I've stripped them, gone right back to the root of the song. Taken away a steel string guitar, picked up a nylon string guitar. So I've got this Portuguese flamenco guitar that I'm borrowing from a friend of mine.
Lovely, yeah.
It's stunning. It's really stunning.
Great to play.
But because you play that differently to a steel string and it sounds differently, to get the best out of it, I've had to relearn the song, how the song sits with that instrument.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So, and it's taken me probably about 5 weeks per song, and I've done 3 songs so far, and I've still got loads to do, but yeah, so I'm kind of working on, and also it's just me and a guitar, and I've added some violin in from a lady called Veronica, who's over from the Czech Republic.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, she's doing a bit of playing live with me, and she also plays with a gypsy jazz quartet as well.
Yeah.
But she's very talented, so I've added some of her in. I'm going to put some cello on there and a little bit of double bass.
Yeah.
But it's going to be very sort of just gentle strings mixed with a nylon string guitar with my rough voice.
That's the thing. That's brilliant. I mean, you've sort of. It's really nice that you've considered that setup in a way, because I tend to find that I've listened to a lot of people who fall in the singer-songwriter box, and when it comes to recording things, the absence of all the other instruments, they're going, oh well, I haven't got drums and I haven't got bass, but I want to put them onto my recording. It's a very interesting mindset that you've come with to say, right, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not going to turn to a band and go, right, fill all this in for me.
No, less is more.
Yeah,
less is more has always been my maxim. But I have kind of pushed that for the last album that I released, Luna, with a full band on. I kind of pushed it right to the edges of the envelope, if you like.
Yeah.
But, and into more like like your folk country rock kind of area.
Yeah.
But I felt I don't necessarily feel every album should be different to the last.
Yeah.
But it kind of has been that way to a degree throughout my career, and I think it's because I constantly keep on challenging myself. I keep on saying, well, how can I make this song really, really speak to somebody? And it's almost like the spaces are really important in the music.
Yeah,
particularly when the subject matter is so emotional. It's important to get those spaces in.
I completely agree with that. It's interesting, really, because I come from sort of a jazz background in a sense. So, it's very much we talk about space and playing as little as possible and just pulling out of the track completely. And it's interesting that I think that comes with a level of maturity in a sense. Just that knowing, let's not play here. Let's not we don't have to do anything here. And that's a really nice thing to hear other musicians say, because I tend to find that's really when the best music comes out.
Well, I listen to an album every single day, right?
Okay.
At least one.
A new album, or?
Yeah, if I can. Or I've got quite a large collection of music, but I try and find, and I've been trying to find albums that sound like the album I'm trying to record.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to find references and trying to see how people have done things. And I've really struggled. There are some, but you have to look over like a back catalogue of decades to find them. They're not necessarily anything that current. Although Nessie Gomez I've been listening to, and her album Diamonds and Dust, is it called?
Okay.
I think of the Diamonds and Rust by Joan Baez. I don't know. Diamonds and Demons.
Diamonds and Demons. Okay.
Fingers crossed.
We'll look it up.
We'll look it up. Yeah, it's a great album, and it's she's playing nylon string guitar, and it's very, very delicately done. There's strings in there, but actually there is one of the tracks goes into like an electronic dance song, and it's the weirdest thing, but it actually kind of works. But so I've been trying to draw inspiration from seeing how these albums are produced. It's really interesting stuff. I've been listening to a lot of early Leonard Cohen again, as you do.
Absolutely,
and hearing how he did it as well, and also Willie Nelson, because of course Willie Nelson plays in nylon string as well.
So do you find you taking hats on and off? You're going like, this is my, analysing hat. This is my producer hat. This is my musician hat.
It's all the same hat.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I found myself with a lot of free time, and I needed to find something to do with my free time, and I decided to learn as much as I could about everything.
Yeah.
And when you work for yourself and you enjoy what you do, it doesn't feel like work. It becomes part of who you are. So pretty much I'm doing something at some point in the day. Yeah. Always.
Yeah. And you're a really busy musician.
Always busy. But you can be as busy as you want to be, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it sounds like you're being productively busy as well, which is great. And I think we're the fact that you're sort of heading towards an album, which is I'm really looking forward to hearing that.
Me too. It's going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah,
it's getting there.
Definitely. And I think you'll. I mean, I'm. This is just me, hypothesizing here, but I think that it'll be a very interesting to see how much time you've spent on these things, and in contrast to the old things. But in a sense, I like to look at things as a new project, in a sense, not try and judge it on the old things.
But it's inevitable you will.
Yeah,
because that's kind of the path, isn't it? It's the path that we follow as musicians.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it'll be interesting because the album I did before Luna was called The Fall of Eden, and that was much more stripped back.
Yeah,
but it's still, to my ears now, for what I'm producing now, it still sounds too full.
Yeah,
and so I'm trying to start with, as we said, the bare bones and just tiny little ethereal things in there.
Yeah,
that's it.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing this. Have you got a date?
No,
possibly,
no, I wouldn't commit to that.
Don't want to commit to anything. You'll be the first person.
The minute you commit to it, it's kind of like everything's all systems go, isn't it? You then got to start programming in everything, and
Yeah.
So I'd hope to get the tracks recorded this year.
Okay. That's very open-ended, which is great.
Very open-ended.
Yeah. You would hope to.
I learned a tip once off of a publicist. He said, never release an album at the end of a year. And the reason for that is because when... I'll give the tip to everybody.
Okay, that's awesome.
So the reason for doing that is that if you release it at the end of a year, right, you don't actually get considered for any of the awards for that year.
Right.
And then the next year, well, that's last year's album, so you're not in next year's awards either. So the best time to release an album is the best first part of the year.
Yeah.
And also usually January music presses desperately looking for stuff to feature. So they're about top tip for everybody.
There we go. Yeah. So always release in the beginning part of the year. Yeah, early part of the year. That's a really good tip, actually. Do you know what? It's a really good tip. Everyone needs to pick up on this. But yeah. No, I was going to say
next January.
Yeah, and next January we'll have loads and loads of albums coming out from loads of artists. It'll be like, Kenneth said, this is what you got to do.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah, you'll have loads of competition for awards though. That's the problem.
So be it.
Absolutely.
Not won anything yet. It doesn't really matter.
Well, this next album is going to be, I'm sure it's going to be up there. So
Fall of Eden got nominated for a few things in the folk world, but yeah.
Well, we're holding out hope for you. I think.
Doesn't matter.
No, and that's the interesting thing about it. It doesn't really, in a sense. It's like but it's nice to have some things like that. But it's not the be all and end all, is it?
No, it's not.
But yeah, no, it's it's great talking to you and
thanks for your time.
Finding out, I want to thank you for your time. But yeah. I'm just here. I live here, But it's great, having more of an insight to your music, and we'll obviously follow you, and hopefully, you can come back when you've got some more. Well, your next album actually would be great to, even if we just have a chat on the podcast or something. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to.
But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you, Kenneth.
Cheers.
And you can follow Kenneth on. You're on Facebook.
You just Google Kenneth J Nash.
There we go. Just Google it.
Don't forget the J though.
Don't forget the J. Yeah, or you'll be following the jazz percussionist,
which isn't a bad thing.
It's not necessarily, but we want people to follow Kenneth J Nash. There we go. Yeah, but thank you very much.